Hi, and welcome. We're going to talk about processing our emotions. Last month, if you recall, in our weight loss lesson, we talked about emotional eating. And so by now, you've kind of started to get an idea as to what emotions trigger you to turn to food. So that first part is awesome, right? Like we needed to be there to raise that awareness. But now what do we do? Now that we're feeling and we know that when I'm overwhelmed or when I'm stressed, lonely, or bored, that triggers me to turn to food. So now, without triggering to food, what do I do when I still have those feelings? Because remember, we're going to be human and we're going to have all of those array of emotions all the rest of our life. So we want to be able to figure out, how can I be a woman that knows how to feel these emotions without using food to solve for it? So the number one reason, or the number one thing we want to do, is actually learn how to process feeling those emotions. So that's what we're going to work on today. So think of the emotion right now that number one triggers you to turn to food. I want you just to imagine that. And then what I want you to do is, number one, I want you to name it. And it's only going to be one word. If anything's more than that, it means that that's a thought. That's a full-on sentence, and then we got to break that down. What is that thought? How is that thought making you feel? So for me, I know overwhelm was the feeling that used to trigger me to turn to food, my cereal or my wine. What is that for you? We need to name it. Number two is find it in your body. Where does that land on you? Is it in your solar plexus? Is it in your chest? Is it in your shoulders? It's fascinating. I've actually been doing this work myself, and I'm embarrassed, and it starts my feet. That's a new one for me. Where is it for you? Where does that feel like for you? Because again, the more that we can become aware of it, name it, recognize it, the more we're the owner of it, the more power we have over it. Once you do that, number three is to lean into it and to breathe in it. This is where we tend to get hung up on. And we recognize it, we can name it, and then we want to hop off of it. And I'm seeing that a lot in our calls, right? It's like, okay, I recognize I'm feeling stressed, but I don't want to feel stressed, so make me another model and let me feel better over here. My challenge right now is like, let's own it. Let's feel it and feel empowered that you're women that can feel any emotion. And so by doing that, step number three is leaning into it and breathing through it. Right? Like just breathe into it. And for me, that embarrassed feeling, I just let it breathe, and I breathe into it and I let it, and it starts at my feet and it goes all the way at my body. And that's what I call sitting in it. We're processing it and we're letting it, allowing it to be there. Step number four is, what does it feel like? For me, the embarrassment is like it rolls all the way through, right? Stress and anxiety sits in my chest. It's really, really tight. I feel so much more empowered once I know what emotions they are, what I name them, and where they're landing on my body and what they're feeling like. And once you know what it feels like, step number five is, what does it look like? I've had clients saying, oh, it's dark and it's ragged and rigid and it's sharp. Or others is, if it's even a happy emotion, it's just like light. And you know what comes to mind when I think of that is the confetti we pour on our kids' birthday cakes. Light and wispy. Okay? So what is that for you? What is the emotion? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And number six is reminding ourselves that whole time that we're breathing it in, that it's simply a vibration caused by a thought in our brain that is triggering chemicals in our body to make vibrations flow through our body. We're in charge of that. And again, that's so empowering to know that I'm sitting in embarrassment, right? I'm sitting there and I'm feeling it, and it's a wave washing over me, and it's simply because of the thought that I'm having. And I'm in charge of that. And as long as I kept reminding myself of that, I was willing to sit in there and feel it. And number seven then is to allow it until it subsides. So how long does that take? For some, it might be just a few seconds. For some, it might be a couple of minutes. And I've had women say anxiety hangs around a little longer. Okay? But But just imagine, friends, if you got really good at processing emotions, what's stopping you? Because if right now you want to lose your weight, but you're worried about feeling embarrassed about saying no at the next family dinner about a second helping, what if you got really good at feeling embarrassed and knowing where it lands? You breathe through it, you can see it, you can feel it, you allow for it, and you say no to seconds. Guess what? The results that you want are on the other side of the emotion that you're using food to buffer for it. Friends, this has been such a helpful tool. Work on it. That's basically your homework, and I'll write it out on a sheet for you in the worksheets. But work through it this month. Bring anything, any questions you have about it, any struggles or any ahas you have, bring them to the calls and share it.